Hi everyone, and welcome to the day 12 of Spooktober. Today's story is going to take us to Russia. So without further ado, let's get into it. Once upon a time, there was a soldier who had trouble in the army of the Tsar. Twice he had undergone severe punishment. The third time, he knew he was face to face with death. So he resolved to flee by night and hide himself by day in some ditch or thicket, for he was afraid that in the daylight he might be recognized. The next night he saw a glimmer of light in the distance, and thought to himself, "I will go toward that light. Perhaps it will somehow help me out of my trouble." When, however, he came up to that light, all he saw was an opening just wide enough for him to creep into. The moment he was inside, thick darkness fell upon him. He could find his way neither in nor out. But on groping around, he at last came upon a staircase, up which he climbed and found himself in a passageway. Through this passageway he went for a long, long time, until at last he stumbled upon a door. He opened the door and stepped into a room, but it was pitch dark there too. So he groped all about until at last he stumbled upon another room and entered another door. And so on he went through 11 rooms, and finally reached the 12th, where at last he found a lighted candle upon a table. The room was beautifully furnished, with couches and chairs and tables, even a piano. And the soldier thought to himself, "Come what come may, I shall make myself at home in this room." So he stretched himself upon a couch. He lay there for a while, lost in thought, when, lo and behold, the table began to lay itself. When the cloth was spread, all sorts of good food and drink began to appear on it. "Come what come may," he said to himself again, "I am hungry, and I will eat and drink." So he fell to and ate to his heart's content. When he had eaten all that he could swallow, he threw himself upon the couch again and began to think. Suddenly 3 women entered, clothed entirely in black. One seated herself at the piano, while the 2 others danced. Without saying a word to the soldier, tired as he was, when he saw that, he arose and danced with the ladies. After they had stopped dancing, they began to talk to the soldier, talking of one thing and another, and finally come round to the question of how he might break the spell that bound them. They told him the very way and manner of doing it, saying that he had nothing more nor less to do than to pass the night in a certain room which they would show him. A ghost would come there and pester him with all sorts of questions: who he was, how he had come to be there, and all manner of other questions. But he must not, under any circumstances, say a mortal word to all these questions, not though the ghost tormented him in all sorts of ways. If he could only hold out in silence, the ghost would vanish, and then he would feel not the least pain from all the torments he had been enduring. Others had tried to break the spell, but they had not been able to resist answering a question. When the soldier thought that he could do that, and so, without further words, the ladies escorted him to the fateful room and left him there alone. When they were gone, he undressed, bolted the door securely, and laid down on the bed. But he could not sleep, for he kept thinking about what was to happen. At 11 o'clock, a sudden knock was heard on the door. He dared not make a sound, for he was determined to ransom himself, the ladies, and the enchanted castle. So he kept still as a mouse. Again the knocking came, but he made no answer. At the third knock, the door flew open, and walked in a gigantic ghost, all clothed in flames. The ghost placed himself at the bedside, and began to ask the soldier who he was and why he had come. But the soldier never uttered a word. Then the ghost seized him, threw him upon the floor, and began to torment him. But no sound passed through the soldier's lips. At the stroke of 12, the ghost departed, saying, "Though you wouldn't tell me what I asked tonight, you will tomorrow, when we all three come." When the ghost finished speaking, the door flew open, closed again, and he was gone. The soldier arose from the floor, lay down on the bed again, and fell asleep, without feeling the least harm. The next morning, the ladies appeared. They were all in white up to their knees, and they led him back to the room where he had been the previous day. They placed a chair for him and set a delicious breakfast before him. When he had breakfast to his complete satisfaction, he fell asleep and snored till evening. When he awoke, he asked how late it was. The ladies replied that it was 9 o'clock. They gave him a good supper and led him again to the same room to sleep. At the stroke of 11, someone knocked at the door. He made no sound, but at the third knock the door flew open, and 3 ghosts entered. The one who had been there the night before asked him the same questions, but received no answer. Then one of them seized him and flung him about until the poor fellow lay helpless against the wall, all covered with blood. When the clock struck 12, the spokesman said to him, "Though you wouldn't answer tonight, you will tomorrow, when we all 4 come." With these words, the door flew open, closed again, and they disappeared. He again lifted himself up, laid down upon his bed, and felt no harm. In the morning, the 3 ladies came, all in white up to their waists, and escorted him to the sound of music into the other room where, after breakfast, he again fell asleep. At night, they escorted him to the same room to sleep, but when they had gone, he did not go to bed as usual, but began to consider how he might avoid the fearful torment in store for him. He wondered if he could withstand the torture that 4 ghosts would inflict. First, he looked out of a window, but the look told him that below the window was a frightful abyss enclosed by rocky precipices. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that word. Sorry about that. He went to the second window, but there it was no better. It seemed to be even worse. So nothing was left for him but to heap all the furniture of the room before the door, in the hope that he might escape thus his tormentors. At 11 o'clock the knocking began. He made no answer, but at the third knock the door flew open, and all the furniture returned to where it belonged in the room. The ghost who had questioned him the other nights now began to repeat his questions, commanding him to tell who he was and how he had come to be there. But the soldier was not to be made to speak. Then the ghost who was questioning him ordered one of the other ghosts to go below and bring up an anvil and 4 hammers. And when these had been brought, one of the ghosts blew up a fire and threw the soldier upon it. When he was heated to a glow, They laid him upon the anvil and beat him with hammers until he was flat as paper. But with all of this, he did not speak one word or make one sound. The time was up, and the ghost must go, for the clock was striking midnight. Before they went, they told him that he and all around him were blessed. And then the door flew open, and they vanished. He again rose, laid himself upon the bed, and sank at once into sleep. The next morning, the three ladies, all in white from head to foot, come to thank him for ransoming them, and they told him to choose among them for a wife. Now the youngest of them had grown nearest to his heart, and he declared himself ready to marry her. And so he married the youngest of the three ladies with great festivities. As they came out of the church to go to their house, a new city sprang up along the roadside. The rejoicing was great. Thank you all so much for joining me for day 12 of Spooktober. I hope you will enjoy me for the 13th day of Spooktober. Until then, see you tomorrow.